Today is the 28th of March 2019 at 28 minutes past 2 in the afternoon over here in the UK. And we're going to start with Russia and Venezuela. So we have Russia conducting an observation flight over the US this week. This is on March the 30th. This is part of the Open Skies Treaty, which is where countries allow other countries to fly over their country, basically looking at military movements and stuff like that, in order to prevent escalations and worries about what other countries are doing. The last time Russia had a flyover of the United States was in 2018, and there was an issue where they had sensors on board their plane that they were not supposed to have, which caused obviously some confrontations. This is the first time in 2019 that Russia will be flying over the US. The US has already conducted 3 flights over Russia as part of the Open Skies Treaty. Obviously, it's of interest to me because we're coming up to the end of March. There's 3 days left in March, and two of those 3 days are high watch days for me. The 29th of March 2019, which was the day Brexit was supposed to happen, which has been postponed until April the 12th or May the 22nd. Most likely April the 12th, because they've had votes this week and there has been no consensus on any one particular option related to Brexit. So it looks like we're going to be leaving on April the 12th, but March 29th is a high watch day for that reason, and also it's part of the simple code theory that I created, which is just adding one to the day, the month, and the year since 2001, specifically September the 11th, 2001. If you keep adding 1 to each of those days, months, and years, by the time you get to 2019, you end up on the 29th of March 2019. Nothing significant may happen, but I found it interesting and presented it. And obviously that was the Brexit day. Now it's not the Brexit day, but still we're watching for a number of events taking place. It's also the 23rd lunar day in the 2nd lunar month, which is 223, one of the series of numbers shown in the I Pick Goat 2 video in the teacher's hair in the beginning. A lot of you will be aware of that already. If you're not, you can go ahead and have a look. But that leads us on to March the 31st. After that, where it's possible there's a missile launch of some kind. Not exactly sure, but there's a lot of events unfolding this week that are kind of edging towards confrontations, escalating, and possibly going over the top. So this is one event to watch out for. March the 30th, obviously the day before the 31st. Russia conducting a flight over the US as part of the Open Skies Treaty. And then we also have Russia basically having the same form of strategy it took in Syria over in Venezuela. So according to Russia, the US is trying to orchestrate a coup against Nicolas Maduro and install Juan Guaido. So Russia is trying to prevent that, and part of that prevention is doing things like sending fighter jets over to Venezuela, which is highly controversial, and having military assets in Venezuela, which is obviously not too far from the United States, and considering the relationship between Russia and the United States, is something to keep an eye on. So fresh off his success in stopping another Middle East regime change in Syria, Vladimir Putin is now setting up shop in Caracas. It's not as simple as saying Russia has financial assets to protect. Rosneft, the state oil behemoth, has been throwing money down a black hole in Venezuela for years, so has China. The recent move to bring in more military support is designed to protect Nicolas Maduro from what Russia surely sees as an orchestrated coup against him. Russia's foreign ministry confirmed that it sent military personnel to Caracas this weekend. Unlike the US military, which was never invited by any government official into Syria, the Russian military at least has been. Maduro is now surrounded by his own military, Cuban revolutionaries and gangsters, and now some Russians, as well as Chinese. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin was reportedly told by sources in Washington that around 100 people were on the Russian planes that landed over the weekend, and that it wasn't clear what they brought with them. Russia has routinely sent military trainers, advisors, and technicians to Venezuela, but 100 people, however they came up with that number, was considered more than routine. For his part, Vice President Mike Pence also called on the Russians to leave Venezuela. He said their presence was a provocation. This obviously is followed by Donald Trump repeating the similar thing. I'll play the video for you guys.
What sort of complications does the Russian involvement now pose? Russia has to get out.
Are you thinking of increasing pressure on Venezuela, and how will you do that?
Well, they've got a lot of pressure right now. They have no money, they have no oil, they have no nothing. They got plenty of pressure right now, so we'll see. They have no electricity. And other than military, you can't get any more pressure than they have. Unfortunately, a lot of people are starving. They don't take the aid. Maduro won't take aid. We've sent hundreds of millions of dollars worth of aid to the border. He won't take the aid. He'd rather have his people starve than take the aid. I don't think that's good, even from a political standpoint. Even from a dictator standpoint, I don't think that's good. But there's a lot of pressure on them right now. We'll see. All options are open. Just so you understand, all options are open. Go ahead. All options are open, yeah.
Okay, so clearly all options are open. And one of the things that stuck out to me in that little interview he had with the press there is when he said Venezuela has no electricity.
We're strapped in for a flight on board in Ethiopia.
Okay, so when he said Venezuela has no electricity, the short pause after that kind of made me think maybe the United States has something to do with that. Obviously, that's not too much of a leap, considering they want Nicolas Maduro out. Part of trying to orchestrate a coup would be trying to turn the civilians, the public, against basically the president of the country. One way to do that would be by making their lives misery, and obviously having no electricity definitely achieves that. So a lot of tensions going on in Venezuela at the moment, and it's obviously not too far from the United States. So if you live in the US, I would expect you'd be keeping a close eye on the events that are unfolding in Venezuela and everything that surrounds it. In the meantime, Trump has signed an executive order to protect the US from a debilitating EMP attack. So this is a subject that we've been covering for a number of years, an EMP attack on the United States. And while there has been EMP commissions set up under the Obama administration, this is the first time there's been a directive to the entire country to actually start doing something about it. This doesn't mean that things are going to be done overnight. Obviously, they'll be doing research and coming up with ways, cost-effective ways of trying to protect the electric grid. Obviously, the EMP Commission should have done a lot of that work already, so it really should be about design and implementation at this stage. But it may be all too little too late, considering the potential actors to be blamed for this event have the weaponry available now to do it. If you're thinking about, for example, North Korea with their Jushi bird, that may not reach the United States, but it could be used. They've also got, well, it's reported they have satellites up in space, possibly capable of, generating EMP above the United States. Two of them pass over the United States twice a day, so there's another possibility. Obviously, there's Russia with its hypersonic glide vehicles, China with the same, and obviously there's the most likely possibility that I said, homegrown attack, a false flag, another 9/11 style event in order to go about World War III and bring in the New World Order and the Antichrist. So that's another thing to keep your eye on. Meanwhile, the Taiwanese president is pushing for more military assets from the United States. And obviously this is going to be a problem because of China. China sees Taiwan as part of its territory, as a rebellious country that they're trying to bring to heel. And the United States has supported them over the years and obviously has provided a number of military assets to Taiwan. The only difference now is that there's a trade war between China and the United States, and the trade war is, the stock market hinges on that trade war. So if, for example, things were to devolve, whether that's with North Korea or with Taiwan, that gives China a bit more reason to kind of walk away from any sort of agreement that they might be trying to instigate. And obviously the stock market would be heavily affected by any news of a failed trade deal. So that's the reason I'm keeping an eye on Taiwan, to see how that develops and if things push in the wrong direction in that area. Lots to keep our eyes on. Meanwhile, over the last couple of days, a rocket was launched from the Gaza Strip into Israel, hitting a house there, injuring, I believe, some residents in the area. There were no reports of any deaths or anything, but this came at the time when Donald Trump declared the Golan Heights as Israel's, and Benjamin Netanyahu was in America at that time. I believe that was on Monday. The trip was cut short, and Benjamin Netanyahu is now back in Israel. As part of this whole retaliation that they went about over the Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe it was. At first, there was attacks on the Gaza Strip. A peace agreement, sort of a temporary peace agreement, was brokered by Egypt between Hamas and Israel. But there have been more attacks by Israel targeting Iranian bases in Syria, as they have been doing. This is the first time they've used airstrikes in quite a while, since the S-300 air defense system from Russia was employed. They were using tanks, so they seem to have gone back to airstrikes for the time being. Obviously, a lot of things happen over in the Middle East, especially between Israel and the Gaza Strip and Israel and Syria. So not exactly sure if this is going to lead to further escalation, but it's definitely something to keep our eyes on, especially because we know biblically Damascus is involved in the end times, and obviously Damascus is in Syria, and that's where a lot of the confrontations are happening at the moment. In relation to the Iranian strike, this is just a report on it. IDF air missile attack on Iranian ammo stores at Aleppo, darkened city. This attack killed at least 7 Iranian-backed fighters, so there most likely will be some form of response from Iran. They've been saying that they're going to respond for the various attacks that are taking place in Syria against their forces. As of yet, we haven't seen anything directly. We've seen a couple of things come from Hezbollah or Hamas, the Iranian-backed fighters in the Gaza Strip and in Syria, but we haven't seen anything come directly from Iran, which is obviously smart on their part, because if they were to engage directly, then it does escalate very quickly, involving the United States, and most likely Russia will be involved, and that's how everyone just starts killing each other pretty quickly. So that's all the reports I wanted to bring to you today. A lot of different areas of watch: Venezuela, Taiwan, Syria, Israel, Iran, obviously. So keep your eyes open, you guys, and have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.